Okay. Do you want to do that again?
No.
I'll do it then. Episode 3.
Yay!
How are you doing, Felipe?
I'm all right. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So this is the 3rd episode of Drum Education Live.
Yeah.
Kira
We
can't
always
be-
have one of the members absent now.
Yeah,
Is
well,
is that a pattern?
well,
So
I
next
don't know.
week it's you?
I think it's my turn. I'll take a week off next week. Hopefully not, because one of Kira's kids is not well today, so she couldn't make it. But
It's all right.
we shall.
It happens.
It does, yeah. It's the advantage of having 3 people; the other 2 can take over. The only week
Exactly.
it'll be really interesting is when there's just one of us talking to ourselves in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So today we were going to, I guess we can do 2 things today, can't we? We can talk about our biggest challenges, which was one of the things that was suggested last time, and we were going to have a look at some hand and foot techniques. So do you want to go first on challenges?
Yeah, because my challenge is very, very simple and very quick.
Okay.
My biggest challenge is, and obviously I could come around to it, but I just choose not to.
Okay.
but my biggest challenge is to play note for note what somebody else has played. Therefore, I don't know how to play any Rush songs.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly, because you have to play exactly what Neil Peart recorded.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I've never, everybody around my age, at some point, they've learned to play Tom Sawyer. I didn't. Okay. I've never played Tom Sawyer in my life. In professional terms, the funny thing is, whenever I joined a band that was looking for a new drummer, and in the audition process, I was up front and say, I cannot play note for note what the other guy played. Obviously, if it's a ballad, I'm not going to play double bass. I'm not that kind of drummer, but I cannot play what the previous drummer played before. Right. And everybody was kind of cool with that, saying, we're looking for a new drummer anyway. As long as you respect the original arrangements of the song, that's fine. Sorry. Well, but funnily enough, there's 2 types of bands that I've been invited to play, but didn't work out because I cannot play exactly how the original drummer. One band is like, you would never think of that, which is the Beatles.
Right.
So obviously I haven't been asked to play in the Beatles. What I'm saying is I failed in my audition to a Beatles tribute band.
Right.
Because they want to recreate exactly what has been recorded. Right. Yeah. And it's not an issue of being more, being easier or more difficult. It's an issue that I cannot play what the other person has played. It doesn't. I could, but instead of enjoying playing, I would be so worried about getting note for note right that probably I will not get the notes right.
Yeah.
And it's not going to sound good. And the other kind of tribute band, it never worked out, which is funny, which people think it's funny because it's my style of playing, is Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Because it's everybody knows, you don't need to be a diehard fan. If you know a little bit of Led Zeppelin, you know that live, they never played as they recorded it.
No, never.
But the 2 tribute bands I've been invited to audition, they wanted me to play exactly what was in the record.
Yeah.
And I was like, guys, not even John Bonham played exactly what's in the record, But yeah, so that's my main difficulty. For better or worse, because sometimes not being able to play what other people played saved my life. And other times, I couldn't get a job.
So can you give us an example of when it's been an advantage to not play like that?
When people were unhappy with the previous drummer they had.
Okay.
You know, and because the thing is, sometimes what happens, especially when bands become professional, the band started with friends playing together, right? And then one of the friends never wanted to be as serious musicians as the other guys. And then this person started falling behind.
Yeah.
And then the band wouldn't be able to explore new stuff because, you know, the guy he's happy with his 4 on the floor shuffle thing, and, you know,
yeah,
which is fine. But then the band cannot, and then that was an advantage when I came in and I said, guys, I've listened to your songs, I know the arrangements, but I cannot play like the other guy. I've even heard once, like, thank God.
Well, that's a good sign, I think.
Exactly, yeah. Or it was, and in Brazil, the guy said, that's why we're looking for a new drummer, because we don't want anyone who plays like the other guy.
I think we talked about this a while back when we were having coffee about jam sessions.
Yeah.
And about how people don't really jam a lot of these things. They just kind of get up and play stuff they know. Do you think it's kind of because it's a safety net, I suppose?
Yeah.
And that's why they want you to play exactly as it is, because it kind of covers up their own shortcomings, I suppose, something like that.
The thing is, unfortunately, there are two things that I kind of got tired of jam sessions. It's not about trying new stuff. It's not about, as you would imagine, really jamming.
Yeah.
It's basically entertaining the public and showing off.
Okay.
And I even saw cases where you had a guitarist that was a little bit better than the average guitarists in the jam. And so the following week, instead of calling the guy on stage like 3 times, they called just once, and the week after that they didn't even call the guy.
Right.
Yeah, which is, you know. And the other thing, it was for me a disappointment, but actually I think that's the way I was wrong. That's the way jams are. I thought that jams were a place where you would meet new musicians. And if you were trying to put a band together, or if somebody calls you and say, "Oh, do you know people to come and play next Friday?"
Yeah.
It would be a place where you would, "Oh yeah, I know plenty of guys, so let's see who's free," right?
Yeah.
But no, it's the jam sessions. It's an end on itself.
Yes.
You go there, you play the same song the same way. You can see when there are especially guitarists who have been practicing a special lick they've learned, that they want to, and then they want to put that lick somewhere, and the solo.
Yeah. I've got a little story but kind of related to that, about people like having specific bits. It'd be 2 years ago. I did a short tour with the metal band I'm in at the moment, and you have to share the drum kit on the. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and so it's double bass drum, triggers, everything, and I set it up as symmetrically as I could get it, because I'm left-handed, but I wanted it to be like, to make it right-handed, all you had to do was swap the hi-hat and the floor tom. I even had the rack toms mounted in reverse. It doesn't make any difference to me. I can, move around or whatever.
I don't play any fills, so don't make any difference.
No. I mean, that's another thing. If I'm on a strange kit, I generally cut the fills down to almost nothing, because that's the bit that screws you up, because everything's in place. But the funny thing was, so I'd set this kit up basically to facilitate rapid turnover, like really quick, so everyone could just go boom on stage, because that's what you're after. And this one guy from a band, he came out and goes, he bought a tom with him, not a snare or bass pedals, a tom. And he said, "Could I put this on the kit?" I'm like, "No," because it's, I've set it up like this for a reason. No, you can't. Like, everything's set up for, and it's because he'd had this fill in a song that needed that tom. And it's like, dude, no one's gonna know.
Exactly, I know.
Hit the floor tom a few extra notes. But it's very strange. It's a safety net thing. I think, that it's kind of, people are afraid to make mistakes, I suppose. I don't really know.
Yeah, well, mistakes, they happen. Even with Rush, they did happen.
Oh yeah, of course.
But the thing is, musicians, they have, that's the feeling I have. Musicians, they have a really hard time understanding the public. They don't understand that the public doesn't listen to music the same way a musician does.
Yeah. You get guys with perfectionist syndrome. I've come across that a few times, that they won't play live unless it's. Yeah,
I know. And I have a friend who's a bass player in Brazil, and he played. And he played with one of the biggest pop bands in Brazil like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the guitarist wanted to rehearse the whole set on sound check every time.
Oh God. Yeah, I've been in bands like that before.
And the other thing is they created a setup in terms of technology.
Yeah.
That everybody had a pedal, I don't remember which brand, that simulated the speaker, right?
Right.
So the original man, the guitarist band member, he had this setup. The other guitarist had this setup. The bass player had the setup. So there was no monitors on stage. Everybody had in-ear monitors, and everybody had the same. He bought pedals the same pedal for everybody.
Right.
So everybody would have the same sound. So every sound check, everything would be the same, Yeah. And regardless of what was going on the PA, everybody on stage would be listening to what he wanted to listen.
Yeah.
And even though you had that setup that never changed, and everybody had their in-ears, which would make sound check like 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Just to see if everything is working. He wanted to rehearse the whole set from beginning to end before the gig.
No thanks.
Yeah.
I toured many years ago it's a very small rock band, but the guy who ran it was very much like that. And if you made a mistake in the gig, you had to rehearse it in the sound check before the next one. And when I say mistake, right? So I have a similar thing with you about the note for note thing, but maybe for slightly different reasons. It's like I learned a couple of Dream Theater tunes, Dance of Eternity and something, I can't remember what the other, Rotomania. Yeah, Rotomania was the other one. And they're great, but they take so long to learn that by the time you've learned them, you don't want to play them. And that was, because it's one of the things that kind of pushed me towards more of the fusion end of things, because it's a balance of structure and improvisation, But I mean, this guy would literally make the band rehearse if say I played the fill, the phrase was correct, but I hit the wrong drum. Like, oh no, there's supposed to be a tom there. It's like, bloody hell, come on, So and all it did was make everybody really anxious all the time, because everybody's so stressed they're going to make a mistake. He's going, oh God, he's going to make us run through it again. And it does the opposite of what it's supposed to do.
That's what most people don't understand. It does the opposite of what should be.
Yeah, it's not fun anymore, is it?
No, it's not.
So, okay.
On the other side of the spectrum, I did a tour in the U.S. years ago that they were so desperate to have a drummer because everything was set, everything was ready to start rehearsals for the tour, and the drummer got in a car accident and broke his leg.
All right.
Yeah, so they were so desperate for a drummer that whatever I played was amazing.
That's good.
Because they basically didn't have any, they wouldn't have time to audition anyone.
Right.
I got the gig because was one afternoon back in that time there was no mobile phone. So for whatever reason that I don't understand what it was, I was home on a weekday in the afternoon.
Right.
And my phone rang, and it was this bass player I knew.
Okay.
And he said, "Please tell me you're not committed to a tour for the next 3 months." I said, "No, I'm not." "Okay, the job's yours then." basically that was it. I was the first one to answer the phone.
Because when we spoke to Pete last week, he was relaying some stuff about, I think it was in the 70s, but that was quite common apparently. To, you know, because there was so much work going around. I know it's not quite the same circumstances here, but and it sounds like a much freer environment. I think also with the technology stuff, when you're describing that setup of that band who would rehearse the whole set, I was getting really nervous already, because I think, Jesus, what if all it takes is one of those things to go?
Exactly.
And the whole thing's buggered. And it's such a it's it's almost like rehearsal room syndrome, where you set it up in the rehearsal room and it's great, but you know that nothing ever goes right on a gig. Stuff breaks all the time.
Of course, yeah.
And you imagine that, what a nightmare. You know, like one of your things goes down and that's it.
You know, there's did you read Bill Bruford's autobiography?
I haven't. No.
There's a passage in the it's no spoiler, so you know, it's just a little thing. When he did that reunion tour with Yes, with kind of they put everybody together. It was like 8 people on stage.
Yeah.
So Alan White had a completely acoustic set, and obviously Bill had just a snare drum and 2 cymbals.
Okay.
Everything else was Siemens drums, right?
Yeah.
And he says the story that in that tour when they were playing Madison Square Garden, for some reason, that was late 80s, so computers in music weren't very reliable. He said his whole rig was connected to 2 computers. Right.
Yeah.
And then he said that for whatever reason, one of the computers decided to restart.
Oh no.
So they had the first set, they had the break, and then they had the second set. So during the break, one of the computers decided, I'm restarting now.
Yeah.
And the second set started with a dual drum solo. Him with the electric stuff and Alan White with the acoustic stuff, right?
Is this with King Crimson?
No, this is with Yes, when they did a reunion tour. Yeah, when they put I think there were 8 people on stage.
Bloody hell, okay.
Yeah, it was Chris Squire, John Anderson, and then Trevor Rabin on the one guitar and Steve Howe on the other guitar.
Okay.
Alan White and Bill Bruford, Rick Wakeman, and I don't remember who was the other guy playing the keyboards.
Sure.
You know. And then he said that the second set started with a dual drum solo. And that night, the only thing he had to do a drum solo was a snare drum.
Right.
Because everything else was, not working.
Bloody hell.
And it took a long time. He said that he only got his full his full kit working halfway through the second song.
Wow. God, that's like a bad nightmare, isn't it?
Exactly. You see?
A bad dream you have about playing.
Exactly. So depending on the kind of music you're making, you have to be prepared to have a lead going into an amp. And
yep. Yeah. The fewer bits you've got between everything I don't know. I learned that a long time ago, because it seems like a nice idea to have all this stuff. So I've got in-ears, and as soon as one link of the chain breaks, that's it.
Yeah.
I had that happen to me years ago. I used to play in a band called Anchorhead, and they played Star Wars as prog rock. And it was Charlie Griffiths from Hacken was the guitarist, and a guy called Pete Rinaldi he plays with Natalie Imbruglia. So they were pretty good players, and it was all on 8-string guitars. And we played Celebration Europe, a big Star Wars thing, and I think it was in the Excel Centre. And I think there was a couple of thousand people in the thing waiting to watch us. And the in-ear monitors just died. I couldn't. So I had all the backing tracks on a click, and it just stopped working. And I had to play it through a Darth Vader helmet. So I couldn't hear anything, couldn't really see anything. I mean, there's a video of it online, and it's okay. But my God, I just felt my stomach fell out of my legs at that point. I was like, oh God.
and that's the thing. And then you have to deliver, because there's a couple thousand people in front of you. They even if they knew what was happening, they don't care.
No, but they didn't. Like, listening back on it, it's pretty good actually, considering what had happened, because they're good players, you know, and we knew the song, but people didn't notice, and that's the other. I think that's kind of the main takeaway from that was like, yeah, they just don't know, you know, they're not sitting there listening and going, oh, you've missed a 30-second note out. They're not listening to it like that.
Yeah, a friend of mine he is an amazing guitarist, and funnily enough, he's a metal guitarist, but he likes to improvise.
Right.
And he was in a band some time ago, just a band put together to make some money with metal stuff.
Yeah.
The guy who put the band together was the drummer. He said that every night the drummer said, oh yeah, but you didn't play the solo as whoever recorded the solo, you know, and people are going to come and complain. And he said nobody had ever complained.
The day that happens, I don't know, I think I'll probably quit, to be honest. If somebody comes up with a notebook and goes, in the third verse, in the second part, you missed the second. Nobody, they don't know. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, so
up to you. So it's up to you now. What's your main difficulty?
So I was thinking about it, and I thought kind of the most probably I've had two really big challenges, and the second one I'll talk about when we talk about technique.
All right.
But the first one is stage fright.
Really?
Yeah. I had horrendous, like really bad stage fright, and it was exacerbated by an incident that happened when I was at MI. So just when I say really bad, as in my limbs would stop working.
Wow.
And I'd throw up before I went on. Sometimes I got so nervous, and it took probably 10 years to get over it properly. And I have a little tip about that. But when I was at MI, I'd only really been playing properly about 2 years. And I scraped the audition somehow. I don't know how, but I got in anyway. And I was practicing furiously. And then one day, in one of the classes, they said, right, we're going to get you up to do an open solo. Now, having been playing for 2 years, I had no idea what to do. And I froze, like in place, literally, and got laughed at. So it was like everything, again, like a bad dream, all in one go. In retrospect, thinking about it now, I think what had happened was the teacher had run out of curriculum. And just because there was no like tips as to what to do, they didn't say, you know, okay, try this motif. I didn't know about question and answer. I didn't know about ostinatos. You know, I'd been playing, and this was only like 4 or 5 months into the year course, so halfway through. Yeah, and that stayed with me for a long, long time, to the point where literally my hands would they'd stop. So the way I got over it eventually was almost by accident, actually. I trained as a hypnotherapist in 2008, from 2006 to 2008. And my supervisor on that course gave me a really good tip. Now I'll just give you some context for what it was before I say it. So when you do that kind of thing, you have to stand up in front of a class of 50 people, including, there were 2 medical doctors in there as well, supervising. It was quite a good school I went to. And you have to run a clinical session on everyone. So there's a structure to it, right? And that's terrifying because they all know exactly what you're doing. It's like playing in front of other musicians, right? I mean,
it's like playing a gig and then Eric Moore, Dave Wackel, Steve Smith, and Thomas Lang all sit in the front row.
yeah, exactly. And not only that, they're marking you, and they're going to right? So, and I spoke to my supervisor beforehand, and I said, I was really quite worried about it, and she told me. Maggie Chapman is her name. She's still working, and she said, "You're trying to do something that your brain is incapable of. Your brain cannot judge your own performance." And it was like, "Oh, okay." And that's true, by the way. The human brain, you've got you have no objective view on how good you are in any given situation. You can't do it. It takes it takes everything that's happened to it before, and then makes an assumption on what it thinks it is. And I went through and I did the hypnosis session, the clinical session, because there's stages to it. And I came off and she said, "Keep it simple, don't try anything clever." And I got up and I did that, and I just remembered it in my head. I said, you can't tell whether it's any good. It's not for you to say. That was the thing. It's not for me to say whether I was any good or not. And I got up and I did it, and people were coming. Nobody said anything for ages. Whatever. And then slowly people said, "That was brilliant, really clear, concise." And I thought, okay. And then the head assessor came up to me and said, "Yeah, one of the best ones we've seen so far." I was like,
cool.
Okay. What have I done there? Right. Well, first off, I gave up the idea that I have any. That was a big thing for me. Like, I've got no say over whether I'm any good. It's not for me to say. I mean, you'll have had this experience where you play a gig and you think you're really good, and nobody gives a shit. they're dead. And then you'll have other shows where you just think, "Oh, that was awful," and everyone's like, "My God, that was the best thing ever," right?
I know. When it happened to me the first couple of times, I thought they were making fun of me.
Yeah. You think they're taking the piss. You're like, "That was awful. What are you doing?" And you occasionally get moments where you get like the unicorn moments where you get the both. You play brilliant. You think you play brilliantly, and they love it. But that was a big thing of the whole. That was the big turning point. Is I'm incapable of judging it, and it's not for me to say, and keep it really simple. And from that point on, I kind of committed to underplaying when I play live. That's not to say I do, but like, keep it simple and let myself get into it. Because I find if I do that, by the 3rd or 4th song, I'm warmed up, I'm used to the kit, and I can go for it. And reminding myself when I got up on stage that, like, it's not for me to say. That's kind of that's my mantra these days. And particularly when I'm teaching students, I always ask them, when I go to jam sessions or whatever, they say, "Oh, I didn't play very well." I said, "Well, how do you know? How do you know you didn't?" "Oh, I didn't feel very good." And I kind of try and shift their perspective away from thinking they played it right to, did you enjoy it? Was it fun? If it was fun, you probably sounded quite good.
Exactly.
And that was my probably the biggest thing I've ever had to get over, actually. And it took quite a long time for it to trickle down. I still get it now, but I mean, I've got to the point now where I dropped an entire verse out of a song with Spearhead, the band I play with at the moment, and I didn't give a shit. Like, it's gone. Like, you can't do anything about it. And if you're doing a recording, you overdub.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I never had stage fright. Exactly the opposite. I feel quite at home on stage. Maybe I'm a show off. But there were two things that happened in my life that if I had any stage fright would kill it. The first one was I was playing, I don't know if I told you this already, but probably 15 times, so 16th now. Okay. I was playing, I used to play in this band, and then I left this band to play in another band. And a year later, they called me and said, we have this, it was even before I went to MI. It was my early 20s in my hometown. And these guys, they called me and said, we have this gig at a theater here in town, and our drummer is not going to make it. So the repertoire is kind of the same. So just come in, and would you come and play with us? This is just what this one gig. I said, yeah, fine. And they said, okay, because it's been a year since we last played together, let's have a rehearsal. And I even joked, well, that would be different because there was never a rehearsal.
Right.
I joined the band. They called me like when I first joined the band, they called me and said, we're looking for a new drummer. Would you be interested? Yeah. Oh, we're playing at this club. Come and see us. I went to the club. I talked to them, and the drummer said, yeah, these guys are really great. I'm going to play with somebody else. So come and join the band. I said, great. And the following week, I was already on stage with that band playing another club.
Yeah.
You know? And then obviously the rehearsal didn't happen. The only time we would rehearse, it didn't happen. But as they said, the repertoire is the same. You know, the songs is the same thing, same arrangements. Just come in and play.
Yeah, yeah.
And we did. And for some reason, the monitors for that gig weren't very good. Even though it was a theater, the monitors weren't very good.
Yeah.
Which was fine. I knew the songs inside out. There was only one little problem. I think the fourth song into the gig, I looked at the set list and I saw a name, but in my mind came another one.
I remember this. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the song on the set list was in 6/8.
Yeah, yeah.
And the song that came in my mind was in 4/4.
Oh no.
And they both had a similar drum intro, obviously.
Yeah.
One in 6/8 and the other one in 4/4. So because I wasn't in the band, all the songs the guitarist counted off for us to start, right? And I have to say, it was funny because he counted it in 6/8.
Right.
But in my mind, I thought, why is he counting like that? instead of going, oh yeah, it's not the song. No, I was like, why is he counting like that?
Couldn't possibly be you.
Of course not, right? Why guitarists?
That's a valid comment.
And so the guy like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and they will and I had long hair. I had hair. It was long. I was playing like that, so I couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
And when I looked up, I saw the guitarists and the bass player. They were looking at each other, and the bass player was also the singer, and he was trying to sing.
Yeah.
And they looked at each other, and they looked at me, and I was like, "Wow, what's happened?" And then I said, "Well, let's play softer and let's try to listen." And then I'm like, "Oh my god."
Oh dear.
And I realized the chorus was coming, and somehow I did this drum fill, and I landed on 1, and I went into 6/8, and the whole theater were like, "Yeah!"
Wow.
30 years later, I have no idea if they cheered because they thought it was the craziest arrangement ever, or if they like, oh, he finally found one.
I'm going to go with the former, I think, because I don't know. When you were playing that, this is, you might not know, were your backbeats landing in the same place they would if it was 6/8, or was the whole thing shifted polyrhythmically?
No, I was playing six. I was playing 4-4, so the whole thing shifted.
Oh my God.
I was playing 4-4.
Yeah.
I was going instead of going.
Okay, so even the snare drum wasn't landing on the 2 and 4 then?
No, the snare was landing. Well, the snare was landing on my 2 and 4.
Yeah,
not
sure.
on their, not on their 2 and 4.
It's on my 2 and 4. What do you want? Oh man. I suppose you can get through that. You can get through anything, can't you?
Yeah, and then obviously the rest of the gig went up to that point was okay, and after that was okay again. Right?
You're a musical genius. You just don't realize. That's like the longest displacement in history.
Exactly, you know. And then when we finished the gig, we went to the dressing room in the theater.
Yeah.
And I think we spent like 5 minutes in silence.
Yeah.
And then when the guy who was the sound engineer came in, he opened the door, and then the 3 of us started laughing really hard. And we couldn't talk. And the guy was looking at us like, what's happening, right?
Oh my God.
And then probably another 5 minutes, we were laughing like crazy.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
cool.
if I had any stage fright, that alone killed it.
Yeah. So should we have a look at some technique?
Yes.
Do you want to go first?
Well, since we're gonna, am I wrong, or are we gonna try to relate your feet technique with my hand technique?
Yeah.
So how about you tell me what you're gonna do with your feet, and then I'll see what I can do with my hand.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna move the camera in a second, but I came across a technique. Now, the first thing I have to say is I'm a fan of technique, and I'm not at the same time, right? So people, especially on YouTube these days, get kind of wrapped up in clever bass drum techniques and whatever. So to me, what I'm really doing is a version of heels down and heels up, but I think it's called constant release. This is my version, and I came across it watching Steve Smith and Jojo Mayer, and also kind of worked it out on my own after I saw a clinic with Jim Chapin. Watched him do the wrist motion and thought, whoa, okay, that might work on the hand. Might work on the feet. So I'll put the camera down. You'll have to let me know if you can see reasonably clearly there. So how's that? Is that any good?
I cannot see your well, yeah, I can see that pedal, but the other one I can't.
Move the hi-hat up.
You're not going to be using the hi-hat anyway?
No.
All right.
Never use the hi-hat.
Never, yeah. Why? Keith Moon didn't have a hi-hat.
There we go.
Yeah, Lionel Hampton didn't have a hi-hat. Okay.
Is that reasonably clear?
Yes, it is.
Cool. And can you hear me talking?
Yes, I can hear you talking.
Good. Okay. So, right. Hang on a minute. Can you hear that music outside?
No.
Good. Okay, it's not picking up then. Okay. So the constant release technique basically is a mix of 2 strokes. Now I equated it to the tap and the whip of the Mahler technique.
Okay.
So you've got the tap stroke, that, and then what I call the drop stroke or the whip stroke, that.
All right.
Now you can do like tap whip or whip tap.
Is the whip kind of played with the heel?
Sorry?
Is the whip kind of played with the heel?
Right, so I'll put my foot on the floor so you can see it.
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of dropping the whole leg on it like that.
Okay.
So
all right.
The tap stroke like that is a lift and a drop.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So when I'm teaching bass drum technique, this is one of the things I get quite heavily into, this idea of bass drum is the opposite of hands, in as much as hands are down up, so you throw the stick and let it rebound.
Yeah.
Feet are up down.
Okay.
You lift and drop. But the principle's the same, just in reverse. So you've got a tap stroke like that, and then
okay,
a drop stroke, and I'm pushing from there rather than pulling from my quad.
Just like the molar.
Yeah, it's very, very similar. So you end up with this. So it's quite a subtle movement.
Yeah, it is. But another thing, you have half of your foot on the pedal. Your heel's is off the pedal. Yeah. So when I'm doing, the ball of my foot is about a third of the way from the bottom. Okay. So I'm actually, I'm thinking of the footboard like it's a stick, right? So there's the balance point for me. Now, it depends on all kinds of, it depends on a lot of factors, because I've got size 11 feet. So my balance point on this pedal is going to be different to somebody who's got size 6 feet. So you have to mess around and see. Yeah, this is something I will address when I'm talking about the hands. Yeah, it's and so that's where it's very similar, because that gives you that kind of. I mean, I can come almost all the way back off the pedal, and so my balance point's kind of there. And it's very easy for getting to put a roll together. That kind of thing. It's very easy, he says. Well, what I mean is it should feel physically easy. So the reason I got into this was mostly to tackle mid-tempo stuff on double pedal. Because playing, believe it or not, playing really fast it's not that hard. So really? Sort of getting that kind of thing over about 180 beats a minute, it's not too tricky. I mean, it takes a lot of repetition, but it's not particularly tricky. There's a dead zone between sort of 160 and 180, where using your whole leg, like that doesn't work, and using your ankles, that is too fast. So I had to find a way of kind of combining both, and this is where I ended up. And it gives you a nice. I'm going to move the camera back up. So it gives you a nice. It allowed me to tackle that tempo dead spot, because that was a pain in the backside, to be polite. And a lot of metal is written. And I started playing a lot of a style called black metal, and a lot of that is written. It's either ultra fast or it's sort of what they call mid tempo in metal, which is sort of about 150 to 170. Okay. So you've got a lot of da 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 da, and I was getting pain in my hips and all kinds of things from trying to do it with my leg, and it just doesn't work. And I'd also come across a lot of drummers who sort of developed sciatic issues and, you know, just hip problems basically. And I made a video about it on my YouTube channel, which is accidentally became really, I got about 4,000 or 5,000 views on it, and I get a lot of questions about it. It's quite a common problem that's never talked about, this issue of hip pain from playing the bass drum. And so what the constant release technique does is it takes the hips out of the equation completely. It's the calf muscle and the ankle, and when you get it, it's very, very difficult to get the hang of. It took me about 3 or 4 months of doing it pretty much every day. But once it's there,
There's almost no tension at all.
Okay.
It's like the philosophy, at least, if the technique's not exactly the same, the idea is the same as the molar. You just drop and it kind of plays itself after a while. The other thing I like about it is it's really loud. there's a lot of power for very little input. And that to me is the sign of an efficient technique, because I'm not like all the double pedal stuff you'll see now, all the YouTube videos, almost without exception, except for the top guys like Virgil and Thomas Lang, that everybody's triggering their bass drum. And playing a bass drum is different to playing a trigger. It's not the same. You can get away with a lot. You can get away with, okay, so maybe get away is the wrong way of putting it. They highlight different problems. So triggers will show up your sort of microscopic inaccuracies, but they hide your dynamic issues, right?
That's the main thing I see with the new metal players is there's very, very little dynamics and articulation.
Oh, there's zero.
It's like,
yep.
And sometimes doesn't matter if they're playing with their hands or with their feet. It's all sound the same.
Yep. Yeah, you get the tom-tom compression. So when they do a roll, it sounds like they're hitting loads of bass drums.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really odd. What's happened is all the articulation has gone onto the ride cymbal. It's the only bit of the drum kit. So all the accenting's done on the cymbals, and it's not anywhere else. You don't get any, because everything's triggered and compressed. You can't hear any fluctuation. But what that does is it makes it sound faster, because if everything's dynamically flat, it creates an illusion because you can't tell where the downbeats are, so it sounds much quicker than it really is. Whereas the acoustic bass drum can hide, it can disguise microscopic timing inaccuracies, but it shows up all your dynamic inconsistencies. And I prefer the sound of an acoustic bass drum to trigger. I mean, I have to use triggers a lot, but it's why I've never used heel toe, because it's very quiet. I mean, it can be played loud, but you have to dampen the bass drum to death and then tighten the head. And I'm not really. This is a thing from having been taught by Thomas Lang. Like, I don't like techniques that don't work on everything. So if I have to have a special setup to get it to work, I probably don't want to use it. Even if I have to sacrifice them, because I don't see the point. And it's why I like that technique and molar technique on the hands, because it works on everything.
Cool.
So there you go.
I think a point you made that's very, very important is because you have size 11 feet, your foot stays on the board, on the pedal board in a different way.
Yeah.
Than a person who has a smaller feet or even bigger feet, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I think people, it's my opinion, but I think people get too caught into technique discussions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because, for example, this is my hand. A smaller person is going to hold the stick in a different position and for example, I like long sticks, not necessarily thicker, but longer sticks.
Yeah.
Other people like shorter sticks. So, and to be really honest, what the world learned about the molar technique was Jim Chapin's version.
Yeah.
We will never know how the real molar technique actually was.
No.
People who had lessons with molar are all dead.
It's a cheery thought.
But that's true,
Yeah.
Okay, Molar himself, he died in the 60s, 1960s.
Yeah.
Okay. Back in that day, a video of anything was almost impossible. Yeah. So there's no video of Stanford Molar actually playing the thing.
Yeah.
It's basically what, and Chapin was always very clear about it. It was an adaptation to the drum set, because Molar himself, he played huge drums with calfskin outdoors.
Yeah.
and then you bring it to a jazz club. If you're going to play like that in a jazz club, you're fired.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's one thing. So I think we need to learn the principles of all these techniques, but never try to sound or to look or to feel like the guy who showed us.
Yeah.
Because my first my first thought about it was when I was in Los Angeles, and I started this journey about being a musician because of Kiss. And I remember, they had a huge drum kit, and I loved the fact that they had a huge drum kit. And I remember at a store there in Los Angeles called Guitar Center, they have a kind of a museum of gear, and they had one of Kiss drum kits. And I was like in shock that the drum kit wasn't as big as I thought it was.
Right.
And then I've learned that the drummer, he was like 5'6".
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So he had obviously had a lot of drums. He had the 2 bass drums, I think 8 tom-toms, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because he was a small guy, in the videos, those drums looked huge.
Yeah.
But they weren't.
Yeah, perspective. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I started, and then a couple of years before, in my hometown, Iron Maiden went to play, and I actually met Nico, right?
Yeah.
And he's a very tall guy. So there's no way I'm gonna even if I was even if I had all the drums Nico has, and I wanted to set up my kit like his,
yeah,
would never be like his because I have a different constitution. And so with technique, I think it's there's when you said you like technique but you don't like. It came to mind a friend of mine, some years ago, we were talking about technique, and he says, I love technique to learn it and then forget it.
Yep.
So if somebody shows him something new, he'll practice it to get it.
Yep.
The moment he gets it, he stops obsessing with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says, you learn technique to get it out of the way. And basically that's it. So, I don't claim I'm the reincarnation of Moeller. Okay, but I created a version that works for me.
Yeah.
Which
very loose.
Sorry?
Very loose.
It is, because the whole thing is, as Dom likes to say, and he claims it is his sister who said to him, tension is the enemy of motion.
Yep.
Okay, so, oops, too loose. But let the stick do the job. You just control the stick. It also will help to play fingers.
So when you play that whip, are you just letting the other 3 notes just rebound? You're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't play at all.
So that's something I've always struggled with. I'm going to grab my pad because I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Something.
Okay. Cool.
So you're going to say something?
What I do is I control the number of rebounds I want.
Right.
Okay. So if I want to play 8th notes.
Yeah.
Triplets.
Yeah.
16th note.
Yeah.
Question?
So it looks, I might be overthinking this a little bit, but it looks like what you're doing looks really loose. So let me show you what I'm doing here. I don't know how clear it is. So if I was going to do a 2, I'd end up with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So 3, and then
that's
4.
it.
I get, maybe I am doing that.
You are doing that.
Yeah, okay.
It's because the thing is, this is what I understood to be the molar motion.
Yeah.
Some people understood the molar motion like being down, tap, up, down, tap, up,
Yeah.
down, tap, up.
Yeah.
You know, but to be honest with you, it doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, yeah.
To me, the reason of the molar motion is to, as you mentioned before, efficiency of motion.
Yeah.
So you move your hand once, and then you get as many notes as you want.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you want to play triplets, you allow 2 bounces, and then when you get the second bounce, you do the whipping motion again. But if you're going to play down, tap, up, down, tap, up, now you're playing 3 notes.
Yeah, that was what they taught at MI, and then when I had the clinic with Chapin, that kind of changed it, because he really simplified it and basically said that molars, like in the book, it's too complicated. It's just a whip and a tap.
It's this same guy who said, you know, I'd like to learn the technique to forget about it. He said, imagine if you're going to, the way to learn the molar is learning it, is doing it with
Yep.
somebody guiding you. Because imagine if you're going to describe, instead of teaching somebody how to ride a bike, you're going to describe.
Yeah.
The person will never be able to ride a bike.
No. There's too many factors. There's too many nuances to it. Yeah. Okay. That's really, so this is a specialty of yours, isn't it, the molar?
I wouldn't say it's a specialty, because I'm not specializing in anything, but it's something I like.
Okay.
You know, it's something I like, and it's something. There's a phrase that some people attribute to Carl Jung, some people attribute it to Miles Davis, and some people attribute it to John Coltrane.
Okay.
That I like. The phrase is in music, obviously, it is learn everything about theory, harmony, melody, and rhythm, then forget it and play.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I'm on the drum kit, I'm not thinking paradiddle, molar, whipping motion, finger. I try to solve the problem that happens.
Yes.
And hopefully, because I've been practicing the free stroke, the molar, and the fingers, one of them is going to come and solve that particular problem at that particular time.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we can probably. Should we
Yes,
wrap
we
it
can.
up there? Yeah.
We can. We've been talking for a long time.
That's fun. Well, you know, good fun. It's always a laugh. So I guess I'll see you next week.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll have Kira with us next time.
Exactly.
With a new...
Or maybe you're not going to be here.
Well, yeah. Only if you're lucky. All right. Mate.
Cool.
We'll end it there. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Cool.
Yay.
That was really good. Let's stop recording.